Southeast Asia or the Caribbean or South America, where there is Zika virus. And Zika virus is known to be disastrous in pregnancy. When you get infected, you have high risk of birth defects like microcephalia. In fact, it's about 1 in 10 of all pregnancy that gets these birth defects. So that's something people don't realize when they go to travel. And the first trimester is the worst. When you get infected, then you have over 12% problems.
Kijk,
And overall the
Kijk, kan
pregnancy
zijn,
about
zijn
1 in 10.
voordracht niet op het scherm krijgen.
Sorry?
Dus, die andere man is niet aan het praten.
You may continue.
Yes, but then we go to the children. This is a picture of me on the left. It's my first trip with my parents abroad. And back in those days, it's about 1970. I was about 10 years old then. We didn't go very far. We stayed around the country, got there by car, did some walking. But with my children, about 35 years later, or a generation later, I took them to Africa, to Morocco. So it's a big difference. Like when you stay close at home, you're familiar with the diseases, you're have resistance against all the diseases that are there. But when you go further away, you have more risk of getting infected with diseases you don't have any resistance. So that's one of the things that makes traveling with children more risky. They don't have enough immunity against all diseases. So when you're a parent and your child gets born, you have these fantasies how it will be like when they grow up and they go to discover the world and see all interesting things and animals and countries. But when they really grow up and they're going to do that, then you start worrying because it's not everything nice they're going to encounter. And there's all these threats that they might see when they travel. There's a lot of research done about young travelers. And in the Western world, about 1 in 20, so 5% of long distance travelers are under the age of 16. And they're very vulnerable. You can see that by the hospital admissions due to travel-related diseases. 4%, 4 to 5% of the population is infant and children, but they account for 1 in 4 of the hospital admissions. So they're much more likely to get serious health problems during travel. Why is this? It's because they have increased risk of infectious diseases. The main infectious disease in young children is diarrhea, traveler's diarrhea. They're more sensitive to climate conditions like heat,
Mr. Advanes, seems like you have a trouble with your connection. Or the voice doesn't show. And cannot have. It seems like to be a technical problem here. I would wait for a few minutes until Mr. Advan S has reestablished connections. Mungkin bisa di
Tadi apa yang saya presentasinya saya kirim ke Ibu Atika lewat email.
baik, Dok. Baik,
Saya harap bisa masuk.
baik. Terima kasih,
Maaf
Dokter.
saya belum sistemnya nggak komputer baru.
Teman-teman mahasiswa, tolong diperhatikan dengan baik dan disiapkan pertanyaan untuk presentasi kedua narasumber kita ya. Dr. Chaitan, if you don't mind, would you help us contacting Mr. Advan S, because apparently he has a technical problem with the connection.
Yes, my internet was gone, but it's back again.
Oh, right. Okay. You may continue, sir.
Sorry about that. So as I was talking about the more sensitivity of the children for heat, cold, sunburn, and not all vaccinations are registered. The malaria prophylaxis is not always possible to give them the best prophylaxis. And what's very important, they have little insight into health risks. When children are born, they get educated about what to do and not to do to stay healthy. But that is in the context when they go to another country, there are other rules. Like in the Netherlands, it's perfectly safe to drink tap water. But in other countries, it might not be safe. And it's very difficult for children to adapt their behavior to the safety and health regulations of the country that they're going to. So when you want to travel safe as children, you should think about vaccinations. They had some vaccinations at home in the program of the government, but they're not sufficient when they go abroad. Abroad, there are other diseases. We don't vaccinate because they don't. We don't see them in the Netherlands, and we have to vaccinate them like hepatitis A. We don't vaccinate against hepatitis A in the Netherlands because it's a rare disease. But when children go travel, they are at risk, and then we have to vaccinate them. And Japanese encephalitis and dengue, that is all diseases we don't vaccinate in the Netherlands. Then you have to protect them against malaria. Malaria is a deadly disease, especially for young children under the age of 5. So they should have malaria prophylaxis, use a bed net and insect repellent. Children are very sensitive to sunburn, and when they get burned a lot during childhood, they have a higher risk of skin cancer in later life. So you have to protect them against the sun. And you have to make sure that they behave as they should. So it's safe to play in the water in the Netherlands, but like in Africa, you get schistosomiasis when you play in the water. In the soil, they can get worm infections. Also, traffic is very dangerous for children who grew up in a society where everyone sticks to the traffic rules. And when they go abroad, there sometimes are no traffic rules, or people don't apply to the traffic rules. Also, food and drinking. And animals, children in the Netherlands are used to pet animals. And in countries where rabies is a risk, they shouldn't. But they're not used to that. And very important when you travel, not only for children, but for everyone who travels, is good insurance. That if something happens, you can rely on the help and when needed, evacuation. This is one of the main problems in children. In the old days, like the Middle Ages or the ancient times in Egypt and in Europe, we thought of children as young adults. You can see this about the proportions they have. Like normally a child has a much bigger head, but when they paint or sculpture these children in the past, and they look like young adults, but they're not. Children are not young adults, or not small adults. They have a different body composition, a different ratio between the volume and the body surface. The water percentage is higher and the fat percentage in children is lower. Their organs work differently. And that affects the dosing of medicines and vaccines, but it's not really good being tested in children. Most new medicines are tested in young volunteers, about 20 to 30 years of age, but not in children. And then we calculate the dose for the children, but we don't always take into account that their organs work different and that the medicines have a different way of behavior in the children's body. So there's a lot of uncertainty about prescribing medicines and vaccines to children, about the dosage and the effect. Another problem is the immune system. When children are born, their immune system is not working properly. It's not finished yet. Actually, pregnancies should last very much longer before children got born to give them a good immune system. During the pregnancy, they get immune globulins from the mother by the placenta. And at birth, they are quite sufficient in protecting the child. So all the diseases the mother has gone through or has been vaccinated for, the child is protected. But these immunoglobulins vanish during the first months. So the protection lowers. In meantime, the own production of immunoglobulins of the child raises, but there is a dip in protective. So the first few months, a child is very vulnerable for some diseases because the immunoglobulins of mother are already decreasing and their own production is not as it should be. And it takes some years before the immune system is completely capable of making the best immunity. You can see how fast the immune globulins the child gets from his mother vanish. At birth, they're at the top, and then they lower, and at about 4 to 6 months, they're beneath the level that you need for protection. So the first 4 months, a child is pretty much protected, and after that, it gets vulnerable for these diseases. This is an example of chikungunya virus. It's studied then. And another example is the measles immunoglobulins. Depends on whether mother has gone through the disease herself. Then the child is born with more immunoglobulins than when mother is vaccinated against measles. And these immunoglobulins vanish during the first 4 to 6 months. And after that period, the child is vulnerable to get measles. Another part of the immune system is the complement system. Also that is at birth only half of the complement that an adult has. So also the complement system is not ready at birth for the best protection. And this is a graph that shows the different kinds of immunity, and they all have to develop. And you can say that at the first few months, the child is the most vulnerable. At about the age 4 or 5, it gets better, and about the age of 7, the immune system is completely developed, and the child has a good immunity. So the immunity is very low at birth. You see a peak in illness then. The immunity develops and is at the peak at about the age of 20, and after that it declines. And then when people get older, you see again risk of infectious diseases rising because of the immune system is going down. What does this mean for the traveling and for vaccinations? The child is more susceptible to the infectious diseases. You can't vaccinate a child with live vaccines like measles, mumps, and rubella. It's only possible after the age of 6 months, because before that, the vaccine, there are still antibodies from the mother circulating, and they make the vaccine that the vaccine doesn't work. The active immunity develops gradually, and that makes it more risk with live vaccinations. For example, the yellow fever vaccination is a live vaccine, and that can cause an encephalitis in young children. So they're not allowed to have this vaccine before the age of 6 months. And part of the immune system, the B cells, they're not working in young children, so some vaccines don't give any immunity, like the typhoid vaccine. There is a conjugated typhoid vaccine, but it's only used in some parts of Asia. I don't know if it's already in Indonesia, but like they use it in Nepal and India. And that works in young children, but the vaccine we have in the West is a polysaccharide vaccine, and it doesn't work in young children. So we can't protect them against typhoid fever. Also, the malaria prophylaxis is a problem. There's an increased risk of severe course of malaria. You see a lot of death in young children from malaria. So when a child goes to an area where there's malaria, you should always protect them against mosquito bites, and you should give them chemoprophylaxis. But some of these you only can prescribe from the weight of 5 kilos. So the very young children, you can't give the proper malaria prophylaxis. Also very important to prevent insect bites, and also the repellents are not all registered for young children. The most effective insect repellents contain DEET, but the higher percentage of DEET is not permitted in young children. Then it's very important to make sure that they eat and drink properly. They don't drink from tap water. They only drink from bottled water or cooked water, and they only eat things that are safe. But children don't make this difference themselves, so they should be guided very closely. Then the most frequent problem in children during travel is traveler's diarrhea. You see it about 1 in 3 children, and they are mainly caused by bacterial infection, and in the second place the viral, and third the parasites. And the problem with children is they get very quickly dehydrated. So when a child gets diarrhea, you should immediately start with rehydration solution, oral rehydration solution. And sometimes they need antibiotics or other medical care. The oral rehydration solution, it's sold everywhere. and it's very effective. The problem with children is they hate the taste. So it's very difficult to make children drink this when they are sick and have diarrhea. But it can be life-saving, so it's a must. I don't allow people to travel with children without taking this ORS with them. It's also possible that they have diarrhea as a symptom of another infection, for instance, the malaria. So if a child has diarrhea and it keeps being sick, then you have to find a doctor very soon and get a diagnosis. And in younger children, when the diarrhea lasts longer than a day, you should go to a doctor. And you should always go to a doctor when the diarrhea has fever or vomiting or blood in the stools. Other problem with diarrhea is that children often get a diaper rash, and they might get secondary infection. So when you pack for a holiday with young children, you always should take lots of diapers and other stuff to make sure that they don't get infection. The other problem with children is the sun. Like in the Netherlands, we are in a very temperate region. So when the sun is shining in our country, it doesn't happen too often. We mostly have clouds and rain. But when it's shining, it's no problem because the UV factor is not very high. But when they go closer to the equator, then the UV factor gets higher, and sunburn is very likely in young children. So it's very you should prevent the sunburn by covering clothes and sunscreen with a high protective factor. And at the middle of the day, you shouldn't let children play in the sun. You should keep them in the shade. They always should wear a hat. And especially in children, this is very important. Then you have the problem of the flight. Some children like flying, but most of them don't. And this is a very typical image of a child in the airplane. And most children get some problems with the ears. Sometimes a real earache, mainly during descent, because the pressure of the air rises, and then they give this pressure in the middle ear. And the thing to do is then to have the child swallow by letting it drink something or suck a candy or blow a balloon. And then you get that the air pressure in the middle ear gets up again. Sometimes they use nasal sprays, but it's not very well studied. And it doesn't do a lot in young children. So this could be a problem. The other thing is the mental development. Most children thrive better when there's regularity and stability, and when you travel, that's all gone. So we have time difference, you have difference of culture, difference of habits, and it's all very stressing for young children. Some children do well, but other children get stressed, and it's quite difficult for them to adapt to other cultures. And this is a challenge also for the parents. So there are a lot of books written about traveling with children, how to lower the stress. And when you see all these books, you can wonder, why should you take your child on a trip when it only gives stress? Is it better to stay at home? But there are also books for how you should travel without your kids. Some skin problems we also see a lot in children and traveling. One of the major skin problems is due to the sun and heat. They call it prickly heat. Miliaria rubra is the proper name. The other problem is the infections and the diaper rash. The prickly heat is because the sweat gland ducts are blocked in tropical countries, and then you get itchy skin rash, and when they go scratching it, it gets secondary infected. So what you should do when a child gets this is rest and cooling. Perhaps you could go to a air-conditioned space, like in a hotel, light clothing, and you can use some talc powder or menthol for the rash and the itching. This is a child who come back from Africa with some red spots on the trunk. They're itching, and it feels like something is moving in them. Any idea what this is?
Does
We call
anyone
this
want to answer?
hmm?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. I thought you were asking the participants. Please go
I
ahead
don't
with
see
your.
the chat. I think maybe they can put it in the chat, but
All right.
this the African myiasis is the larva of flies, and the larvae grow in the skin. And when you cover them with Vaseline or petroleum jelly, they get the lack of air and they want to get out, and then you can push them out. So it's very easily to treat, but it's better to prevent. And to prevent this in Africa, you should iron your clothes, because the flies, they lay their eggs in the clothes when they dry outside. And when you iron them, then you kill the eggs, and you won't get any larvae in your skin. This is another problem. There's a girl who's been bitten by mosquitoes in Suriname, but it could be anywhere. And you see a lot of infections there, and these are secondary infected mosquito bites. So a lot of problems are quite simple, like mosquito bites, but when you scratch them in tropical conditions, they might get infected. Another problem is when you walk barefoot on the beach, then sometimes there are fleas, sand fleas, that get into your feet. They call it jiggers or tungiasis. And this is another problem. We see a lot of children because they walk barefoot and they play on the beach. And when there are animals on this beach, like cats and dogs, in their feces there are larvae of hookworms, and they can get into your skin, and they can cause a creepy eruption or lava migrans. Also, when the children get into the water, there are some problems with, for example, the jellyfish things. This is the sea baiters itch or sea lice. And they can step into sea urchin, and the spines may break off and cause dermatitis. So children should always wear footwear when they go walking into the water. Then the other problem is the animals. Children don't keep distance from animals, and they put all things in their mouth, also on places where animals are being. So this can give troubles because they're at risk for rabies. So we tend to vaccinate children against rabies. They're more sensitive to venom of snakes, scorpions, spiders, and other poisonous animals. They're more bitten by ticks because they walk through the bushes, and they play on the ground, so they're more prone to get parasites and worms. Then some other things. I used to take my children to the mountains in Switzerland, in France, but they're not very high. But when you go to the high altitude with children, there are some risks. There are risks of high altitude illness, and especially very young children. It's more difficult to recognize, and high altitude illness is a deadly disease, so it's better not to go too high with very young children. When the children get older, it's dependent on how the child is behaving. Like when a child is very careful, it's possible to take children to high altitude, but with reckless child, it's a bit of a risk. So with very young children, it's better not to go to very high altitudes. And then I mean above 2,500 meters. Scuba diving is also something that young children like to do, but they're not allowed to do. In the Netherlands, the minimum age is 12. And up to 14 years, they can dive very deep. And that's because there are no tables for children what is safe, and they can get in problems, in serious trouble very fast. So diving for young children is not done. And the other category is the adolescents. In adolescents, we see a lot of traffic accidents, mainly because they rent scooters. And they don't use a helmet, so we see a lot of burns from the exhaust pipe of scooters. We see a lot of head injury when they have an accident. And the other problem is the alcohol intake. Young ones used to drink a lot during their holidays, and they get alcohol intoxications. And then they fall asleep in the sun, so they get sunburn, or they end up in bed and get a sexual transmitted disease. So it's a very big risk, the alcohol and other drugs. Most young people don't take their condoms when they travel, but in the countries they travel to, that's not easy to get condoms in good quality, so they should take them from home. And there's also risk of bloodborne infections like HIV or hepatitis B when they get a tattoo or a piercing. But it's not all problems with children traveling. There are also a lot of benefits. And I think it's good to keep that in mind, that we shouldn't discourage children to travel, because it's also very good for them to travel. They can learn a lot, they get a higher self-esteem, they get more responsibility and adaptability and flexibility by traveling. They get curious, they get more tolerant and respectful towards other cultures and ethnicities. They get less fearful, have lifelong memories, and traveling is fun. So despite all of the problems you can encounter in travel, it's worthwhile for children to travel, and also to travel to other cultures and other ethnicities. So this was what I wanted to say. Do we have time for any questions or comments?
Okay, we would like to thank you, Mr. Fernandez, for the presentation. This is so very interesting. It brings a little bit my old memories when I was a toddler myself. And my father traveled to Australia, and my mother, brother, and I went there. And when it was stressful, having jet lag and stuff like that. So yeah, it kind of reminds me of that. I would like to invite the participants. Saya ingin mengundang teman-teman sekalian, partisipan untuk bertanya kepada Mr. Advan S mengenai traveling with toddlers, bepergian dengan anak-anak, selalu suatu petualangan. Silakan, boleh menggunakan fitur raise hand. You can use the raise hand feature or put your questions in the chat columns. Silakan.
Oh yeah.
And we also have not only participants joining from the Zoom meeting, but also this is live streamed on YouTube. So some of our students are following this presentation for this seminar from this, classroom streaming on YouTube as well. I would like to invite the students, friends, participants who are watching from YouTube to ask your questions. Oh, Insan Robani. Silakan.
Okay. Good afternoon, sir. My name is Insan, but you can call me Insan. I have three questions for you. In Lombok, we have a tourist center on a small island we call Gili Trawangan. There are many tourists from young people, parents to families, and also children. I once interned there as a doctor assistant, and many international tourists got travel diarrhea, or we call Bali belly disease, and because of lack of facility, so we had to do medical evacuation to a bigger hospital. And my first question is, with the climate change affecting the spread of tropical disease and mosquitoes-borne illness in the tourist areas like Gili Trawangan, what preventive step do you recommend to protect both tourists and local from health impact related to climate change? And the second question is, with so many international tourists visiting Gili Trawangan, how should local clinics or health facilities coordinate with travel medicine doctor to handle health issues specific to tourists, like a disease that are rare in Indonesia but common in their home country? And the last question is, Gili Trawangan has a limited access to more advanced healthcare facilities. What are your recommendation for medical evacuation in emergency? Are there specific standard from cross-border medical evacuation for remote islands to more advanced healthcare centers, especially on children's patient? Okay, that's my question.
That's a lot of questions. The first question, the impact of climate change on the spread of the diseases, it's a big issue. I haven't got the solution for that. So we see it in Europe, while diseases like dengue and chikungunya and Zika were always something you could get in Africa and Asia. They're now coming to Europe. We saw the first cases of dengue in Paris last year. So the mosquitoes, the tiger mosquito, yellow fever mosquito, are spreading throughout the world, and that's because of climate change and travel. And yeah, that worries us. And what you see when a disease spreads, that in the beginning it's a big problem because there's no immunity in the community. There's no herd immunity. And after a while, most people get either infected or vaccinated, and then you see the immunity raising, and then the problem is not gone, but you can handle it. So the first few years will be the most difficult when there's a new disease introduced in the area. And after that, you get sort of a herd immunity on the population. And So some diseases it's possible to encounter that with vaccinations, but some diseases there are no vaccines. So it's a matter of time before the people gets immune. I don't think you can really stop this. We try very hard to stop the climate change, but we are at a level that it can't really, we can't stop it fast enough to prevent diseases from spreading. So we have to deal with it. The other question was when you see travelers from Europe or other countries, they got diseases you are not familiar with. And also the problem with evacuation, when you get substandard healthcare, you want to evacuate. I think these problems should be dealt with by the alarm centrals. Most Western travelers have a travel insurance, and they have access to an alarm center. And the alarm centers, they're staffed with doctors who can get in contact with the local doctor, and they can advise about treatment and about evacuation, and they make arrangements for these evacuations. So that's the importance of good health insurance when you travel, a travel insurance, travel health insurance, and then you get support from your home country in case of serious disease. It's not with traveler's diarrhea. Traveler's diarrhea is usually a self-limiting disease, and the main problem in children is dehydration. So they're quite easy to treat with rehydration, oral therapy, or infusion. And sometimes antibiotics are necessary, but most of the time it's self-limiting. So it's mainly the other diseases that cause that make the problems. And I forgot the third question. I think. Can someone help me? Or Insan, can you repeat the question that I didn't address to?
Okay. My third question. In Gili Trawangan, have a limited access to more advanced healthcare facilities. And what are your recommendations for medical evacuation in emergency? Are there specific standard for cross-border medical evacuation for remote island to more advanced healthcare centers, especially on children patient?
Yes, there are guidelines. International Medical Association has these guidelines for evacuation, in what case you should evacuate. And they're done by the alarm centrals I was talking about. So the alarm centrals, they have doctors who are specialized in evacuation, and they can arrange that. So everyone with serious problems should call the number on their insurance card, and they get in contact with the alarm station, and they can make sure they get the proper medical care.
Insan, does that answer a question?
Yeah, I got it. Okay, thank you, Mr.
Are there any more questions? That is a very interesting question, set of questions about facilities and evacuations, especially for children. I would like to invite other students and participants to ask their questions.
It is also something parents should take into account for choosing their destination. So we advise parents with young children not to go to places where there is no good medical facilities. It's also
Right.
for elderly patients with special needs. They shouldn't go to places that are very remote or have lack of medical facilities. They should go to some bigger islands or bigger places where they have the proper medical care.
That's right. I mean, it's do your research if you're travel.
Sure.
Oke, ada dari teman-teman yang lain? Apakah ada pertanyaan? Silakan. Just a reminder, we also have participants from streaming on YouTube. watching from YouTube, and around 120, 80 to 120 participants. You may ask your questions. Silakan. Mungkin ada teman-teman dosen juga ingin bertanya. So traveling with children is kind of always like an adventure, like you say, and it's always been, sometimes taking care of nephews and nieces are also almost the same. So I can only imagine how it is like traveling with your own. Again, it reminds me of my time when I was 5, traveling to Australia, and the first thing that I remember traveling there was the stress because of the jet lag and lack of sleep. And children tend to have tantrums. How do you think you handle that? Especially when they, to prevent them from having contact with diseases and afterwards.
I'm sorry, I didn't get your question. Can you repeat it?
Oh yeah, children tend to have tantrums even without diseases. And how do you suggest we handle that situation when children having to prevent them from having contact with diseases and stuff and having a meltdown, and also whenever they have certain conditions, medical conditions, they tend to being stressed and being worked out and having more tantrums because of their illness. How do you think you should handle that mentally for them?
I don't really think you can. I think it's something that comes with travel, and you should consider it before you go. Like I told, travel can be very stressful. I remember a friend of mine told me he had a young child when his son was about 2 years of age. They went for traveling, and the child got sick, had a fever, had to be admitted in hospital, and they couldn't communicate with the doctors. So for the child, it was very stressful, but the child was only 2 years of age, so he didn't remember anything. But the parents, they had nightmares for years because of that event. And this was in France. It's one of our neighbor countries. It's a high standard of care, but the French doctors don't speak Dutch and they don't speak English. So communicating is very difficult. And when your child is sick, even it was just dehydrated, it was not a big deal, then you get a lot of stress. And yeah, that's something you can't prevent from happening. Children get easily dehydrated, or when a child gets a fever, they're very soon admitted to hospital. And for parents, that's always stress. So if you want to avoid it, don't go traveling far. Stay close to home. And only when
That's
your
right.
child gets older, like with my children, we stayed at home or in the neighboring countries. Make sure that you can be back home within a day, and then you prevent stress. But if you don't, this will happen, and I don't think you can prevent it.
Right. It means that you need to prepare. Do your research, know your own children, and be prepared, I guess.
And especially with children with underlying diseases, it's very important that you discuss your plans with your doctor. That you ask your doctor, we are planning to go to this in this country. What do you think of it? And if the doctor says, well, I don't know if you should do this because the lack of medical care in this country, or the problems you get when the child gets diarrhea or something, then listen to your doctor and choose another destination.
Right. But how long do you think we should go to the travel clinic before we actually travel? How long is the duration?
Before travel, how much time you need?
Yes.
Most things we can arrange in travel clinic in 2 weeks. So if you come 2 weeks before your departure, but like when you consider dengue vaccination in non-immune like the Dutch population, then you need at least 3 months, because you have to give 2 vaccinations before departure, and they have an interval of minimum of 3 months. So the sooner you come, the better. But in practice, most people do a last-minute booking, so they don't have the time to prepare properly. And also, a lot of people don't go for travel advice when they're traveling, mainly when they go visit relatives. We have a lot of people from abroad in the Netherlands who work in the Netherlands or came as a refugee, and they go back home for a family visit, and they often don't come for travel advice. And these are also the people who bring back the most of the diseases, because they don't protect themselves against malaria or tuberculosis or other diseases, and they are most
Right.
prone to get infected.
Right. I guess, thank you for your response. I guess that's our time is up. Thank you for the presentation, to Mr. Advan S.
You're welcome.
We would like to invite Dr. Chaitan for the next speaker to present his presentation. Dr. Chaitan, time is yours.
Thank you. Terima kasih. Can we? Oh, that's very nice. Yes. I would like to tell it in Indonesian, if possible, because my Indonesian is not really good. It's about healthy on journey to the subtropical and back again in the European country. This is specific for people from Europe when they go to this part of the world. The next slide, please. Saya akan bicara dengan bahasa Indonesia. Ini tentang kalau orang ke luar negeri harus mengetahui bahwa ke daerah lain di luar Eropa risikonya tinggi. Eropa atau daerah utara seperti di Amerika. Next slide, please. Tentang pekerjaan travel medicine itu untuk mengurangi atau menghindari risiko para di dalam perjalanan supaya bisa kembali lagi dengan tanpa sakit. Karena bagaimana mereka bisa mendatang ke tempat kerja saya mempunyai travel clinic, dan mereka datang ke sini biasanya karena mereka untuk persoalan kesehatan mereka sendiri, dan mereka kadang-kadang juga mendapat saran-saran dari travel agent untuk mengambil vaksinasi atau prevention medicine untuk berjalan. Kadang-kadang orang para pasien atau klien datang ke saya karena mereka dikirim oleh rumah sakit dari spesialis yang mereka mendapat saran-saran karena persoalan penyakitnya harus bisa ditangani selama berjalan-jalan di luar negeri, spesialnya ke daerah tropical. Dan juga ada yang diharuskan mendapat vaksinasi itu pada orang yang ke perjalanan haji atau perjalanan ke daerah yellow fever area seperti di Afrika atau negara Amerika Selatan. Kebanyakan tentang pengongkosan vaksinasi atau pekerjaan dari travel klinik bisa dibayar oleh asuransi selama para pasien mempunyai asuransi tambahan. Jadi bukan asuransi yang basic, tapi asuransi tambahan. Next slide, please. Siapa yang mengerjakan travel medicine? Nah, itu kami mempunyai sesuatu pelayanan biasanya dia dijalankan oleh perawat yang mendapat edukasi spesial tentang travel medicine. Juga dokter asisten, jadi asistennya dari dokter juga bisa menjalankan. Kalau di dokternya seperti saya ada di sampingnya, sehingga kalau ada kesukaran tertentu bisa langsung berbicara dengan saya. Jadi yang banyak komplikasi untuk perjalanan biasanya dikerjakan oleh dokter sendiri. Jadi ada beda sedikit. Untuk yang biasa-biasa dijalankan oleh nurse, yang agak sukar dijalankan oleh dokternya sendiri. Setiap 5 tahun harus diakreditasi juga. Kita harus mempunyai kamar, mempunyai medical file, terus kursi untuk atau ranjang untuk menyuntik. Seumpama orang jatuh karena ketakutan, bisa tidur, bisa duduk di kursi tertentu. Jadi kami harus mempunyai tempat mengisi vaksin yang sungguh-sungguh berdasarkan patokan cold chain, dan vaksin itu harus sudah ada di kantor saya, jadi selalu ada tersedia, dan anafilaksi set paling penting itu juga kalau ada kesukaran dari anafilaksi vaksin. Next. Ini destination dari tim kami dari Rice Brickfield NL. Itu sekarang Indonesia lagi ngetop di waktu 3 tahun yang lalu sampai sekarang. Indonesia sekarang ngetop, dulunya Thailand dan South Africa. Jadi kalian mesti senang bisa dapat tamu dari sini, dan mereka senang sekali untuk kembali ke Indonesia. Banyak orang dari Belanda ingin 2 kali setahun ke Indonesia. Next, please. Ini di kantor saya. Saya bekerja kurang lebih untuk 50 sampai 60 pasien seminggu. Setiap pasien mempunyai saya dapat 10 menit atau sampai 35 menit bekerja. Kalau 10 menit biasanya itu mengulangi vaksinasi kedua atau ketiga. Kalau pasien baru 35 menit. Saya bekerja sendiri, stand alone, dan semua berjalan lewat komputer. Jadi untuk appointment-nya juga lewat komputer. Dokter bekerja sama dengan pasien membuat sesungguhnya pasien harus juga mau ikut di vaksinasi atau tidak. Jadi tidak ada diskusi yang berat-berat. Kita tidak mengharuskan, tapi pasien harus juga ikut juga dengan kerjasama untuk divaksinasi. Kita bekerja dengan protokol. Kalau perlu, if necessary, kita harus memberikan peraturan yang baru. Seumpamanya orang sakit yang tertentu, nanti saya tunjukkan lagi. Prevention advice itu tadi Pak Ad sudah bilang tuh, untuk sunburn, untuk macam-macam, untuk oral rehydration salt, itu juga kita bekerjakan juga membicarakan tentang itu. Vaksinasi kita ada juga dari stok saya. Jadi vaksinasi di dalam kamar sudah ada. Oke, kalau ada pesanan obat-obat yang harus diminum, seumpamanya profilakse untuk malaria, itu semua lewat internet, farmasi internet, terus bisa saya kirim resepnya langsung ke sana, terus dalam 1 atau 2 hari obatnya dikirim lewat pos. Next, please. Nah, itu apa yang penting-penting yang kita harus diikuti atau dikerjakan, itulah orang yang dapat spleen removal, kemoterapi, diabetes. Itu kita harus diperhatikan sungguh-sungguh apa risikonya. Kadang-kadang mereka tidak bisa dapat vaksinasi. Maka dari itu travel clinic kadang-kadang lebih baik sebelum membeli tiket, sebelum berangkat atau memilih negaranya, harus lewat ke kami. Seumpamanya ada kesukaran, jadi mereka bisa ganti schedule-nya. Jadi tidak ke negara yang risikonya terlalu tinggi. Next. Ini vaksin saya yang di dalam kulkas saya. Macam-macam. Dari dengue, dari rabies, dari hepatitis A. Next, please. Ini kantor saya. Di sebelah kiri adalah kursi tertentu yang bisa langsung dijadikan seperti ranjang. Kalau orang lagi ketakutan, bisa disuntik tiduran. Ada fixation place. Ada tempat untuk cuci tangan. Next, please. Nah, saya memakai stempel vaksinasi yang dipakai itu langsung di-stempel di bukunya. Next, please. Ini buku kita, pasport untuk International Certificate Vaccination of or Prophylaxis. Ini modelnya kalau yellow fever, ada spesial, ada pakai stempel yang tertentu, diharuskan karena tidak setiap center boleh memberikan yellow fever vaccination. Next, please. Ini yang vaksinasi yang lain. Kadang-kadang juga COVID juga bisa masuk. Ini contoh ya, ini bukan sesungguhnya. This is a demo, dummy. Next, please. Ini kursinya, bisa langsung ditidurkan kalau orang jadi mendapat kolaps. Terus next, please. Di kamar saya ada gambarnya peta dari dunia. Dan saya bisa memberikan contoh ini bagaimana penyakit bisa menyebar kemana-mana. Dari kolom di bawah itu tentang risiko dari nyamuk. Bisa membawa penyakit apa aja itu. Karena orang di daerah kami, di sini, di Eropa, mereka tidak begitu sadar apa risikonya dari nyamuk. Di sini kalau digigit nyamuk cuma gatal, tidak ada penyakit. Kalau dari sana bisa dikasih macam-macam pilihannya. Next, please. Ini alat-alat untuk suntik. Next. Set yang paling penting yang saya ada di situ itu anafilaksis setnya. Kalau ada orang yang dari bisa kolaps karena anafilakse, kita bisa bisa dibangun. Terus kami memanggil ambulans untuk bisa direvalidasi lagi ke rumah sakit. Next, please. Saya bekerja dengan sistem ini. Pasien harus membuat anamnesa langsung lewat internet. Mereka harus mengisi ini. Kalau tidak diisi, saya tidak mau bekerja karena ini sebagai penting untuk menjalankan kerja yang baik. Next. yang dimintakan itu juga tentang antikonsepsi juga, atau orang lagi hamil atau tidak. Terus dia harus berjanji apa yang ditulis itu sungguh-sungguh yang juga di uh, yang sungguh-sungguh dibilang itu adalah yang paling penting juga untuk saya, untuk mengetahui apa ini kerjanya nggak sungguh-sungguh atau nggak serius atau serius. Next please. Oke, next. Nah, ini juga saya juga tanya mau kemana, ke negara mana aja. Bisa negara kedua, negara ketiga, negara empat. Banyak orang, apalagi orang yang masih di antara umur 20 sampai 30, banyak yang bersiarah berjalan-jalan ke Asia, Southeast Asia, ke Thailand, terus ditambahi lagi ke Malaysia, terus ke Indonesia, terus diteruskan lagi ke Filipina. Kita harus juga tahu itu mereka, arah-arah mereka, berapa lamanya, dan mengapa mereka berjalan-jalan untuk hanya berlibur atau menjenguk famili, atau untuk pindah rumah, atau untuk pekerjaan, berangkat ke sana sendiri atau dengan teman-teman. Itu semua harus kita tahu. Tinggal di mana, kalau tinggal di rumah teman-teman di local, itu risikonya lebih tinggi daripada tinggal di hotel. Jadi saya harus tahu risikonya. Aktivitinya juga penting, bisa mau menyelam atau naik gunung. Kadang-kadang mereka yang South America, di daerah Peru, kita harus tahu mereka akan naik gunung di atas 2,5 kilometer atau tidak, atau bekerja dengan binatang dari maksudnya sebagai dokter binatang atau research. Itu kita juga harus mengetahui. Next. Dan kita membuat juga ada filenya dari apa yang mereka sudah dapat, vaksinasi yang sudah dapat, itu bisa lihat semua lewat sini. Dan kita jadi bisa orientasinya lebih tinggi. Bersama-sama dengan buku yang kuning tadi. Jadi sehingga tidak ada doubling lagi. Next. Seumpama kami memberikan profilakse, itu kita ada data-datanya sudah. Jadi semua lewat komputer bisa tahu ini umur berapa, berat badannya berapa, itu bisa diberikan dari standarnya, bisa dipilih. Juga antibiotik, karena kadang-kadang orang yang memakai obat untuk protopom seperti omeprazol atau apa, risikonya lebih tinggi. Seumpama para pariwisata umurnya di atas 60 pakai omeprazol untuk mengurangi kecutan dari lambung, itu risiko tinggi. Maka itu kadang-kadang kita harus tambahin dengan obat, seumpamanya dia mendapat diarrhea, bisa langsung ditangani. Atau pasien yang sering dapat bladder, kesukaran lambung kencing, itu kita juga memberikan profilakse. Next. Dan seumpama sewaktu pasien di kamar saya ada prevensi. Sebelumnya kita sudah membuat pilihan apa yang akan dibicarakan, tentang rabies, tentang malaria, tentang apotek yang dibawa di koper obat-obat yang bisa dibawa seperti ORS atau loperamide, itu mereka bisa beli langsung dari di toko-toko. Bagaimana tentang memakai minuman? Pak Advan S tadi, Dr. Van S bilang kalau minum di Belanda kita minum bisa langsung dari tap, dari keran itu. Tapi di sana harus hati-hati. Itu kita harus memberikan wejangan tentang itu. Risikonya dengue, risiko penyakit yang lainnya. Next. Dalam seumpama orang akan jalan ke Indonesia, kita mempunyai satu data yang penting. Apa itu? Kalau di risikonya berapa tingginya risiko untuk mendapat typhus. Terus bisa ada lagi risiko untuk hepatitis. Itu semua kita bisa lihat lewat data-data tertentu. Sudah sentral ya. Next. So, Pak Advan S juga bilang tentang DEET. Ini kita juga bisa menunjukkan sebagai model. So, saya mengharuskan mereka seumpama ke daerah-daerah subtropical untuk memakai DEET. Next. Ini take home message. Kalau ada orang sakit ke sana, seumpama di daerah kalian ada yang sakit dari orang luar negeri, coba tanya bagaimana vaksinasinya. Mereka biasanya membawa bukunya, jadi kalian bisa lihat apa itu risikonya bisa diambil atau dikurangi. Next. Ya, terima kasih dan sampai jumpa dari tim saya.
Terima kasih, Dr. Chaitan. Thank you for your presentation. It's very great insight for us, travel medicine. Ini pandangan yang cukup menarik ya, karena selama ini mahasiswa ini baru mendengar tentang kesehatan pariwisata, tapi kalau kita bertemu langsung dengan praktisinya, bergerak di bidang travel medicine. Saya mengundang teman-teman sekali partisipan untuk bertanya kepada Dr. Chaitan mengenai travel medicine. Apakah ada pertanyaan? Silakan. This is very interesting because we have seen a different point of view with travel medicine. We've only been exposed to the theory of travel medicine and not in a more tangible way. Someone has raised their hands. From YouTube, from Nikomang Devi Kalantari. Is there a difference between practicing medical tourism and conventional practice?
Pardon?
There is a question from Nikomang Devi Kalantari. Is there a difference between practicing medical tourism and conventional practice?
I don't understand. Conventional. Maybe Art can tell about that.
Now, there is a bit of difference because the conventional medicine usually begins with a complaint about your health and a disease, and travel medicine tries to prevent it. So in travel medicine, you mostly see healthy people that want to prevent illness during travel, and they get vaccinations and prophylaxis. And in conventional medicine, you see sick people who want treatment for their illness. So there is a difference.
Well, thank you, Dr. Advanesh. I hope it answers Devika's question. Are there any questions? More questions? Or should I pick a student to ask a question? So be prepared. Yandri Ahlatul Korima, do you have any questions? Yandri Ahlatul Korima? No question. Okay, how about Karisma Alshad? Karisma Alshad? A47, do you have any question? Karisma Alshad Nur Aziza.
Ya, dokter.
Ya, ada pertanyaan? Silakan.
Izin dok, mungkin untuk saat ini belum dapat pertanyaan.
Suaranya kurang terdengar, Karisma.
Izin dok, mungkin saat ini belum ada pertanyaan.
Still waiting. Okay. So, okay, which one? Oh, it was already answered, I guess. Or with the same questions. Any more? It was the question was how long before we should visit the travel clinic before we actually travel. It was already answered before. What kind of cases do you actually, besides malaria, dengue, chikungunya, that you encounter in your clinic? What other tropical diseases that you, well, not encounter, but prevent your patients to be exposed to the subject?
I think the most is influenza because everybody can get it from everywhere, and the other is very rarely because they don't visit me at the beginning. They visit their own Dr. Layanan Primaire, their own general practitioner, and I advise every traveler before they are when they are at my office, please beware if you come back home again and you got some fever, tell to the doctor you have been outside of the European country, especially tropical country. They have to be aware about the risk if somebody get fever. Because in our country, normally for people who live here, if somebody has fever, then the answer of the doctor is, please wait a moment. There's no a big risk, and try to wait for 2 or 3 days. But if you're back from the tropical country, they have to be alert about that. That means alert about the risk of malaria, especially.
Okay, thank you, Doctor.
And the
Can
other
I
thing,
comment on this, please?
yeah.
what we do in travel clinic before they go, we advise them to keep away from the most common diseases like traveler's diarrhea, sunburn, and insect bites. And when they come back, the most diseases we see is influenza and COVID, coronavirus infection. And after that, the dengue. Dengue is huge at the moment, so we see a lot of dengue. Also during travel, because the short incubation time, most of the dengue appears during travel, and they get admitted in foreign hospitals. So it's a lot of stress due to the dengue. We don't see a lot of severe dengue, but it gives a lot of illness and stress. The minor things that go to general practice are mainly the fevers, mostly arthropod-borne diseases like chikungunya, dengue, Zika, or influenza, or the common diseases like urinary tract infections. They're not really travel related, but they also almost half of the diseases in returning travelers has nothing to do with travel. There's diseases they would have had anyway. Also see a lot of skin problems in general practice, like insect bites and worm infections and scabies. And we see a lot of diarrhea. In the hospitals, we see mainly the dengue and the typhoid fever and malaria. And leishmaniasis is also increasing, mainly the skin leishmaniasis. So that are the main problems we see in travelers.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ganesh. Another question. Great. What type of vaccine is required going to the Netherlands, which cannot be done in Indonesia? And are there any advice for what kind of vitamins or that we should consume to keep us healthy when going around the country, especially for toddlers too? What do you have? Do you have any suggestions?
I don't think you need any vaccines for the Netherlands. It's a very low infectious risk. It's getting a bit more risky for measles because we used to have a vaccination over 90% for measles in the Netherlands, but it's dropping. More people are anxious to let their children be vaccinated. And there is a risk of measles, but it's very small. And otherwise, there's little risk. So if you, of course, in the winter, you can have the influenza and the COVID, the coronavirus disease, you can get vaccinated for. But I don't think you need. And I also don't think you need any vitamin supplements. So not for children anyway.
Right. That's wonderful to hear. Hope we have a chance to visit you there. Not as a patient in your clinics, but as merely as a visitor or probably a student.
That's better. Yeah. You're most welcome.
And there is this anecdote that I used to say to my students in a travel medicine class. In Indonesia, we say small gifts, oleh-oleh. Chaitan and Dr. Dangir might be aware of that the idiom oleh-oleh. So we do not want tourists to bring their negative oleh-oleh, which is diseases, to the tourism places, and we do not want them to bring those oleh-oleh back to their countries as well. So I guess that's the gist of travel medicine and preventive care in general. Okay. One more question. I'm curious about the what is that an iguana in Dr. Chaitan's desk? Is that a live iguana or? And speaking of lizards in general, yeah, there are risks of infections as well. So,
Yeah.
are there any stories about
It's that
infections?
this is the name is I don't know exactly, but they live in Australian part, the southern part.
Oh, down south there.
Baramundi? No, I don't know like exactly the name.
Oh, yes. Okay. Are there any stories about infections concerning that type of animal in your clinics?
Mm.
Not really. There is an kind of animal in the South American that can transmit tuberculosis. It's not a lizard, but it's a scub deer, and I don't know the English word for it. And the Komodo varan can be quite dangerous when it bites. It can get affected, but I don't think we have to worry too much about the lizards.
Well, we have biawak here that spreads a few kinds of diseases. I have not read it thoroughly, but yeah, sometimes it goes out in the rainy seasons as well. Biawak and mosquitoes, and we are starting the rainy seasons just this September. It's been hot for a few months, and it's starting to rain heavily. And so people traveling from Europe should prepare for uh, malaria and dengue fever.
Mm.
One more question?
Talking about lizards, you know gecko?
We have plenty of it.
Yeah.
Big ones.
Last week I was in Nepal for giving a lecture at the Asian Pacific Travel Health Conference, and there was a gecko in my bedroom in the hotel. But I was glad because they eat insects. So I think
Oh, that's right.
this gecko will catch the mosquitoes. I'm more
That's
more
right.
afraid of mosquitoes than I am of lizards and geckos. And
Well, I'm afraid of their bites. Actually, we have something that probably around this big, at least. It went into my kitchen a few months ago at night. It's usually nocturnal. So yeah, it's kind of scary, but it eats small insects and small animals. So it actually brings balance to the environment as well. So it prevents diseases.
Agree.
Catherine Jessica, I have a question from Catherine Jessica. What is the question? From RK2. Please hold for a moment. While we are waiting for the question, I would like to ask the participants, our students, to be prepared for our photo sessions and open your camera. We're still waiting for the question. It is being because in RK2, in RK2 room, the students are following us on YouTube stream, not from the actual Zoom. So one of our lecturers is asking the students there to collect their questions. I guess, oh, here's the microphone. You may face the camera.
May I ask what inspires you to become a doctor and who is concerned about travel medicine?
Please
Can you
repeat.
repeat?
Who inspires you to become a doctor?
Ulang.
Dr. Tan, may I ask what inspires you to become a doctor and who is concerned about travel medicine?
This is the question. Dr. Tan, for Dr. Chaitan, what inspired you to become a doctor and what inspired you to be a travel medicine doctor? Why are you concerned in the first place about travel medicine?
What at the beginning, as you told to our friends, I am a general practitioner. I'm Dr. Keluarga, but I am already on retired, and travel doctor is very easy to work, and you can make your own plan, and yeah, that inspired me. And of course, I've been everywhere in the world, and I have many experience about that. Make me easy to work, and everybody is very happy because they are thinking about the next holiday. Something which I can tell you, but it is also prevention. You have to know you should be very serious about their own health for the patient to prevent more diseases in this country.
Does that answer your question? Jadi Dr. Chaitan menjadi dokter travel medicine, bergerak di travel medicine, ya karena waktu kerjanya lebih fleksibel, kan gitu dokternya, ya lebih santai, tekanannya lebih rendah, dan banyak ketemu orang yang mau melakukan perjalanan jauh, traveling, itu kan menyenangkan karena akan liburan, jadi stresnya juga mungkin lebih rendah. Tapi yang paling penting adalah this is prevention, jadi pencegahan. Jadi penting sekali kita sangat detail ya, sangat memegang prosedur dalam pencegahan dan diagnosis ya, terutama untuk traveler, untuk pelaku perjalanan wisata. Okay, this is our cue. That was the last question for session. Thank you very much to Dr. Chaitan and Dr. Advan S for your presentation. We would like to invite our participants to open your camera and show your lovely faces to our speakers and have a photo sessions together. Bahaya apa-apanya? Silakan teman-teman untuk buka kameranya. Kita akan sesi foto bersama. Mohon agak dipercepat ini Dr. Chaitan, jadwalnya agak ketat ini. Ini sudah on cam semua, tapi sepertinya ini ya, nggak muncul wajahnya. Agak maju sedikit mungkin mendekati ke kamera, teman-teman. Ada yang hanya siluet saja ini. Kalau Karisma wajahnya terlalu turun. Oke, kita mulai. Oke, 1, 2, 3. Oke, selanjutnya. Slide berikutnya. 1, 2, 3. Sudah? Okay, there. Okay, the photo session concludes our seminar, and I would like to give back the floor to Dr. Mira. Mira, please.
Okay. Thank you for wonderful speakers and moderator and all participants. Okay, we finally come to the end of today's agenda. Let us close this seminar by reciting Hamdalah, Alhamdulillah. This concludes today's agenda. We hope you have pleasant experience. Thank you so much for your participation and kind intention. See you again in next time. And good afternoon and goodbye. Have a good day, everyone. And wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Om Santi, Santi, Santi Om. Thank you so much for speakers and all participants. See you next time. Bye-bye. Ini yang di kelas. Mr. Bart itu dari awal kita akhir ya. Yes. Yeah.